Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Delvecchio. I'm here with my friend and co-author Nancy Saxton Lopez, and this is a program that we do live on YouTube every Thursday from 6 p.m. Eastern to about 6:30. We used to do it live on Facebook too, but Facebook got really kooky about
They
uh,
wouldn't save our
they wouldn't
episodes.
save our episodes, and also if you had an extra link you couldn't post it, and if we have guests that doesn't work very well. So anyway, we now just post on YouTube, which works fine. And if you are interested in, oh my gosh, my cat is all over me. She's
As
bumping into
they,
my computer. So this is a program where we often read letters from audience members about their experience of loss and grieving and healing. And so if you would like to send us your letter, we'd very much appreciate that. And if you do, please let us know if it's okay to share.
Mhm.
And maybe you want us to share some of it, but not all of it. That's fine as well, too. You'll find our emails on the description. Mine is kenddv@gmail.com, and Nancy's is nsaxtonlopez
Yeah,
at gmail. I'm sorry, Nancy
Nancy
Saxton
Saxton
Lopez.
Lopez.
I have to update my sheet at gmail.com, nancysaxtonlopez at gmail.com. All of this information is correct, actually, in the
Hmm.
description that accompanies the program. And you can support our work in a number of ways. You'll find that information in the description as well. We'd like you to know that this program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. And Dakin is a really great shelter and adoption center, and also they do all kinds of programs that are helpful for those of us who love our animal family members. And one of them is a pet loss support meeting on Zoom that I facilitate on the second Tuesday of every month from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The RSVP link is in the description, so please don't hesitate to join us if you think that would be helpful. And if you RSVP and then you can't make it, please give me a note back and let me know, so I'll open the program. I'll open the meeting for others. Finally, if you have not subscribed yet, it would be great if you would subscribe on YouTube, because that affects the algorithm in a way that makes the program more immediately accessible to people who are looking for pet loss support. And if you have subscribed, it would be great also if you could just leave a comment, thumbs up, a
A
heart,
heart.
any kind of affirmation of the program helps to raise its profile in the algorithm. And then finally, we'd like you to know that we have a relationship with a company that's called Bereave. Bereave makes these really finely crafted memorial plaques that you would put at a garden, a memorial garden, or a gravesite, or a place inside where you keep mementos of your beloved
Hmm.
animal companion. And if you buy one of these plaques through the link on our description, then we will get a little bit of a part of the expense that you pay for the plaque. We'll get like a little kickback, a gifts of support. So uh, these are really heavy
They're
and well crafted.
they're, yes, they're
Yeah,
very
so they're
heavy,
really
very
good.
beautiful,
Yep,
actually.
yep. So Nancy, do you want to get us started for today?
Yes, we have a story from Elizabeth tonight, and she had two losses. She had Hef and Holly, and so we do have this situation happen, quite often with one of the companions dying, and then later on, or quickly after, or a year or so after, another one. Sometimes I work with a person that had three deaths in a year,
Hmm.
which was really difficult. So this is the story, the beautiful story of Hep and Holly. Hi, Ken and Nancy. I've been listening to your podcast following the loss of my boy Hep 3 weeks ago. This was in end of April. It has been as much of a comfort as anything can be right now,
Hmm.
as I am deeply sad and lonely. Uh, I'm in a deeply sad and lonely part of my grief. That part where the shock has worn off and the body racking sobs are further apart, and life has started to go on again all around me,
Hmm.
while I just continue to stumble on through, feeling totally alone in the depth of my loss. Hearing other stories, while it can't take the pain away, at least helps me feel less alone. I figured I would try to write out their story, and more specifically, my boy's story, to help myself heal and maybe help someone else not feel so alone. You can share the story if you think it would be helpful. I am only on episode 50, so hopefully by the time you share it, I will be slightly less raw. So now that I am doing writing this, it is probably way too long to share, and that's not correct, and may have just instead been a therapeutic exercise to talk to someone who I know understands. Do with that what you will. My college roommate and I adopted Hep and Holly in 2009 during the second semester of our senior year outside of Philadelphia. We told our landlord we wanted a cat because we had mice. Truth be told, we just wanted a pet. He said no, but we did it anyway. Best decision two brash college kids ever made. Who needs a security deposit back? We contacted a woman who'd we spoken to earlier that fall when we were still too afraid of our landlord to actually commit to see if she had any more cats for adoption. Oddly enough, that random Sunday in March, she was just about to get two 8-week-only kittens in. They were the only two in their litter, and they had been born in January, which is super rare for cats. We got there to meet them just as the woman surrounding them was dropping them off. She said she really wanted them to stay together, and despite the fact that we only planned to get one, how could we possibly separate them? They were perfect. A little gray and white short-haired tabby we would name Holly, and her brother, a long-haired black void that we will name Hep. We took them home a few days later on March 18, 2009, after their shots and spay-neuter procedures, and so began the greatest love story of my life. They lived with my roommate and I for 2 months that spring while we wrapped up our senior year. They were such little loves, an absolute hit with all of our friends, though maybe not our parents who were subsidizing our rent and did in fact want that security deposit back. When we graduated, we knew the cats were coming with me. I was moving to New Orleans to teach and had the clearest plans for life after school. As much as our story started the day we met them, I would argue that for me, my story with them really started the day my college roommate stepped on a plane to leave New Orleans after helping me move with them. I was suddenly alone, out in the world, on a terrifying new adventure so far from home. It was me and the kittens just trying to figure it out. And figure it out we did. We lived in New Orleans for a year, where I learned that I can do really hard things, but one thing I absolutely cannot do is see a cockroach without crying, especially a southern one that is the size of a small mouse and often can fly when approached with a shoe. We moved back to Boston after 3 days in a car together and a summer apart while I searched for an apartment, while the cats lived between my old roommate and my sister, both back in Philly. We moved around Boston a few times, eventually into the first home I bought as a bona fide adult, the home where I would paint the bedroom walls bright orange, where my neighbors would become lifelong friends, where I would discover a love of running and finally find my community after so many years of searching, and where we would hunker down together during the worst of the pandemic, with them literally my only physical contact for weeks on end. They were my constant during the tumultuous years of my 20s and early 30s, seeing me through relationship changes, job changes, stress, anxiety, joy, panic, isolation, love, and all of the other emotions of day-to-day life in this world. They were my everything, my anchor, my soul. There's obviously so many more details and small stories to our life together, but I will save those for my personal version of this. Otherwise, this email would be 100 pages long. On March 7th of 2022, we suddenly lost Holly, just before her 13th anniversary of her gotcha day. I say suddenly because I was totally caught off guard, even though I probably shouldn't have been. She had been sick her whole life. She struggled with IBD and had frequent bouts of acute pancreatitis. She spent a lot of time in the hospital, and every time she threw up, it was like a 5-alarm fire. We eventually got her started on a steroid, and that seemed to calm things down. She did really well for over a year until her symptoms started again. They were intermittent, and our vet wasn't too concerned, but there were signs. That weekend in March, we went away skiing. The cat sitter sent me a photo of her at one point, and I could see she was uncomfortable. I hate that I didn't tell the sitter to take Holly right to the vet. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. We were due to come home the next day, but Holly passed overnight that night. I was always terrified of losing her and hated seeing her in so much pain when she would have an acute attack. She was my little snuggle bug, with a feisty, fiery, and funny personality, always quick to be on my lap when I landed on the couch, curling her entire body up on top of me in the most contorted positions, sleeping with her sweet little face ready to be rubbed. She and I were physically linked in a way where it often felt like her body was part of mine. And I was destroyed. Driving home from that weekend, knowing she was gone and knowing that I didn't do everything in my power to help her, threatened to consume me. The guilt and the agony of her death and the circumstances surrounding it gnawed at me. The constant wondering if I could have changed the outcome if we'd had the sitter bring her in or if I had made it home that night instead overwhelmed me every day. I did eventually make my peace with it, but it was a long road to get there and to understand that even if I had gotten her to the vet, they very well could have told me there was nothing they could do. It was likely just her time. And in all of that, I still had Hef to take care of. The guilt I felt that he and I were not as bonded in the same way as she and I were was tremendous. Looking at him and being reminded of the loss, of the fact that we were a trio who was now a duo, was an emotional quagmire I can't even begin to unravel. He was a different cat, obviously, as they all are, more independent, more reserved, and less inclined to melt into me the way Holly did. There was a huge void in my life, in my lap, and he and I had to figure out how to just be us. It took us some time. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, and I wasn't used to his need for a little bit of personal space. He was so sweet and affectionate, but in his own way, with his own boundaries. I couldn't force him to be the cuddle bug I wanted him to be, and he couldn't change who he was because I was so broken. We needed time to heal separately and together. We found new routines, just us, and we figured out each other's communication styles a little better. We became slowly, irrevocably inseparable, and I developed our own hashtag for you, you and me, kid. Over time, our bond became so tight and so all of our own that I don't really remember a time we weren't thick as thieves and so in tune with each other. We fell into lockstep as the two of us and marched on together through the grief of losing Holly and the ups and downs of life as we know it. I think that is part of what helped me recover from losing Holly, him and I finding our own way, just us. He deserved the time to be the star of the show. His sister had a big personality. He really grew into the spotlight as the years went on. In the last year and a half or so, he even started laying on my lap on the couch. What a huge development from a normally very reserved guy. About a year after Holly passed, Hef had just turned 14 and started having some health problems of his own. He had a stroke, which thankfully he recovered from, and his underlying heart disease progressed. His kidneys had been on our watch list for a while, and we vigilantly kept monitoring them, making sure they weren't getting worse. He did really well for quite some time, showing no signs of the illnesses lurking below. His IBD got worse, and we were able to treat it with steroids, carefully balancing that with the kidney disease and heart disease. And he marched on. The summer of 2024, we made the decision to rent out my condo and move into the house my boyfriend had just bought. I was terrified. Hef was 15 years old and fragile. How could I even think of doing that to him? I spent all summer making sure he was ready. We planned the entire move around him, making sure that the new bedding we bought spent weeks on my bed so that it smelled like him and I, making sure the schedule for each step of the move met his needs, that he'd been seen by the vet, and that we were all confident as we could be that he would be okay. I'm honestly not sure I really relaxed all summer, so worried that I was going to push him over the edge.
But he was a champ. The move came and went without a hitch. He settled into the new house like he'd never lived anywhere else, and I was so relieved I couldn't describe it. The weight that lifted off of me as he jumped up on the couch and did his usual routines, just in a new place, was immense. It was like he knew how much I needed him to be okay, so he decided just to be okay. But a few months later, his heart disease took a turn for the worse. We had a heads up in September that it was getting worse, and in October he went into congestive heart failure. They managed to get him out of it, but after 4 days in the hospital, battling his heart disease while also trying to protect his kidneys, he looked like he'd been to war. He came home so thin and so tired. I was sure he'd never rebound, but he did. We eventually got him acting like himself again, eating, using the litter box, and comfortably enjoying his life. He'd very obviously slowed down, spending most of his time curled up under the covers in bed asleep, but he definitely had some spark in him. He loved to curl up next to me at night and started sleeping on top of me for the last few months. No idea why, but I'd wake up with him passed out on my lower back, happy as a clam. He loved his treats still and getting pets on his face and just hanging out with us. We had a new medicine routine, twice a day, 3 to 4 pills each time for his heart, his blood pressure, and his belly. Twice a day, I would scoop him up and bring him into the kitchen, feeling his weight in my arms, kissing the top of his head, and we would do his meds and his food. And he was so gentle. He accepted his meds so well, like he knew he didn't need them, like he knew he needed them, so he didn't really fight them. I built my schedule around making sure I was there, limiting vacations and plans to make sure it was me taking care of him and his meds were on time. Anything I could do to make sure he was comfortable and safe and had as much time as I could possibly give him. Despite how he was doing, I knew we were on borrowed time. I hoped we weren't, but in my core, my anxiety wouldn't let me believe anything else. He made it past his 16th birthday, still pretty comfortable, and spent most of the winter curled up in bed. Around the end of February, he started to come out more, and I hoped that maybe as the light increased and the cold weather lifted, we would see more of him, and we definitely did. But it wasn't for long. Around the end of March, he had one weekend where he didn't want to eat as much, even with an appetite stimulant. I flagged it as worrisome, and a couple of days later, after one night when he didn't eat at all, I brought him to the emergency room, to the emergency vet. They admitted him to try to figure out what was wrong. They thought maybe it was an infection. He had a high white count with no known cause. He came home the next day on antibiotics. He was still uncomfortable. He ate the tiniest bit the following day, but never really got his appetite back or seemed quite 100% again. That Friday, the second day he'd been home, he was doing worse. He was throwing up a little and not eating at all. I talked to the vet, and they said that if he hadn't eaten by afternoon, to bring him in. My boyfriend was home with him in the morning, and I came home early in the afternoon. By the early evening, we knew that he had to go in. He'd come out into the living room and was sitting in the sun on the floor with us. We laid there with him for a bit, but I knew he wasn't okay. I knew he had to go in. Knowing what I know now, though, how I wish we'd just laid there in the sun for a little bit longer. We packed him up and brought him in. My boyfriend drove, and I pet him the whole way. They admitted him for supportive care, and we held out hope all weekend that whatever was causing this could be fixed. They got him a feeding tube, and they put him back on IV antibiotics. They kept him as hydrated as they could, while also keeping an eye on his kidneys. I visited him every night and told him how much I loved him. Though now, of course, I don't feel like it was enough. On Monday morning, March 31st, 2025, I talked to the new doctor who had taken over his case. He hadn't eaten yet, and I had that gut feeling that he wasn't going to. I asked her the dreaded question, when did I have to think about making a different choice? I didn't want to torture him. She wanted to give him 24 more hours before we made that call. He wouldn't live another 8 hours. I got a call a few hours after that his lungs were filling with fluid. He wasn't critical yet, so they were going to try to clear it out. Hopefully, by visiting hours later that night, there would be a positive update. When I got there for visiting hours, it was clear that he wasn't going to recover. He decompensated quickly and was struggling to breathe. He was in oxygen, and Lasix wasn't doing what it needed to do. And there was the concern about overloading his kidneys. It was time to say goodbye. We made the arrangements and waited for my boyfriend to get there. By the time we said goodbye, he was really struggling. We put him in my lap in the ICU, but it was not a peaceful passing. He was having a hard time breathing, and we needed to go fast to help him along. It's all kind of a blur, which maybe it is for the best, which maybe is for the best. It was absolutely not the end I would have wanted for him. And of course, now I beat myself up for not knowing that previous Friday that he was going, for not spending time on the living room floor in the sun with him and having someone come to our home to help him peacefully. I know this is hindsight bias and that I can't rewrite the end with any kind of certainty. And I know from Holly's passing that we'll always try to negotiate the unnegotiable, but his last moments will haunt me for a long time. I've struggled a lot since his passing, as pet parents often do. I've struggled with his last days, with picking apart each decision at each turn and wondering if I chose wrong or did wrong, even though I know I did everything I could with the information I had. I've tried to make straight lines between events where only chaos exists. I've surrendered to the fact that no matter how badly I wish I could change it, I couldn't. And even if he had been able to come home again, it probably would have not been long before we had to say goodbye. His body was shutting down. He was done. He fought so hard for so long, and it was out of his control even. I have to remind myself often that even if that last day had been different, another last day was coming with its own unique set of regrets and pain. There is no escaping it, even if I'm not ready to accept it. The thought has crossed my mind that as soon as I asked the vet the question that Monday morning, when was it time for me to think about saying goodbye, I gave him permission to go. Like I put it into the universe through tears, that as much as I couldn't bear it, I would bear it if it was truly time. And time it was, even if it wasn't in the way I would have wanted for him. In his absence, I miss everything. I miss coming home from work and going to find him curled up in bed and kissing the spot on his head between his ears. I miss the way he'd slow blink at me. I miss the way he'd dive out from under the covers for treats. I miss his high fives. Yes, I trained him to high five. I miss the way he smelled so soft and so clean and how soft his fur was. I miss the weight of him in my lap on the couch when he finally learned how nice it was to snuggle like that. I miss him next to me at night, his head resting gently on my right arm. I miss his tiny meow. I miss the weight of him in my arms every morning and every night to go do medicine and the delightful sound of him eating that always filled me with such relief. I miss the sound of him skidding across the nightstand at night to come to bed and the weight of him in my lower back when I woke up at 3 a.m. to make sure he was okay. I miss all of him, my bond with him, my history with him, and that he was just mine. I could go on, but I'm sure you get it. I'm alone in my grief. My boyfriend, of course, loves and misses him too, as do my friends and family who knew him, but he was mine and I was his. We spent 16 years together, growing up together, going through it all together. We survived the loss of Holly together. My whole adult life is tied up in him and in them, and after this loss, well, I just feel unmoored, like an entire era of my life passed with him. And I have no idea how to look forward. I go through the motions each day, just feeling stuck and sad and afraid of how to go on and how to bring them with me the whole way. The little moments where I do look forward, like buying concert tickets for this summer, fill me with anguish. I won't have to think about his care that night. I can just leave the house and go to the concert. No worries about timing of meds or making sure he gets everything he needs that night. My God, how much I hate that. What I wouldn't give to still be thinking about him and what he needs before I think about myself. I know he still surrounds me. I like to think the blue jays I keep seeing on my walks and in my yard are him saying, "Mom, hey Mom, I'm right here." And I had a very tactile dream about him the other morning where I could actually see him, hear him, and feel his weight. While it almost broke me in that moment when I first snapped awake from it, I am so glad to know that he is still near. I try to remind myself that he isn't mad at me for the end, but that's hard. I try really hard to believe that he knows that I was fighting for him every way I could, and that I just wanted more time with him. I hope he knows I never would have chosen that for him, and that he forgives me that I couldn't give him the last days he deserved. I like to believe he knows I would go back and change that if I could. I know I will love another animal again in the future, and I know it will find new meaning. I will find new meaning and new purpose at some point, and that he will be woven, they will be woven all the way through it. But at the moment, I just want to be sad, and I think that's okay. And I think it's also fair that the month of March will always be the most bittersweet of the year. Their gotcha day on the 18th, right in the middle of both of their so long dates. That may be a month I just choose to wallow my way through every year now. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It's hard to believe that this number of pages only captures the tiniest fraction of it. And unfortunately, it's mostly all the incredibly painful parts. The work you do is so important, and I'm so grateful to have your podcast to turn to in moments where I'm desperate to know that I'm not alone and will survive. I appreciate you immensely. Thank you, Liz and Holly and Hef.
Such a lovely, true, emotional, conflicted story, but which we all go through, right? This is these are stories we read all the time.
Yep.
Euthanasia. Should I have done it sooner? What was really going on? Why didn't I do it at that time? It's not the way I wanted it. All of those questions. But she knows that it was the right time, right? So it's never easy to make those decisions. And afterwards, there's always questions.
Yeah, there's all of the why didn't it happen in a way that was more comfortable, more predictable. Why didn't I spend that last time lying on the floor in the sun with him?
Yeah.
And of course, the reason is that you had no idea that was the end.
That's right.
You might have known that he was in trouble, but you didn't know that was the very end.
That's right. There was of course, anticipation. I love how she said, and we will always try to negotiate the unnegotiable.
Yep. And I have highlighted the line. I've tried to make straight lines between events where only chaos exists. That is really great. It's very poetic, I think, because we try to make sense of things that were just so far out of our control. Like we just try so hard to figure out how to make sense of it and how we could have done it differently, or how we could have managed some better degree of control. And we can't. You can't do that. You can't. It doesn't work.
Even though we try.
Yep.
It does not work.
It's just not within our control.
And all the things she misses, I want to point out, those are the memories.
Yeah.
Those are such wonderful memories.
Yep.
All those times where even just holding him to give him his pills or to pet him and feel his fur. I mean, all of those, it's important to remember forever. And she will.
Yep.
And she's written it, right? So we talk about writing because we think it's cathartic, but also she has that now, right?
And I think it sounds like she's going to do more writing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's really beautiful. And her use of language is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I have to say, the way that she describes March is indicative of early grief.
Yeah.
Because there will come a time where those very painful anniversaries will not be so present.
That's right.
The anniversary of having gotten the kittens, she'll probably remember more so than their death dates, right. I think. And all of the memories that she mentioned, all of the tactile memories and the smell and the weight and
that.
Right? All of that, that's hers to keep. She'll always have those. She'll always have those.
She has had signs, it sounds like.
Yeah, like that dream was really great. That was really great. Yeah.
The blue jays, and I think that I think that we really believe that you can get signs.
Yeah, sometimes the dream is really interesting because the things that I believe that sometimes we assign the category dream to things that maybe are not exactly a dream. Maybe they're actually a visit.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it.
Yeah. That's a good way
And
to think about it.
is that, those kinds of experiences
Mhm.
are hard for us to classify because they're not the kinds of experiences that we experience in consensual reality very typically. And so it makes sense to call them a dream because
You
that's
know,
the closest thing we can think of that kind of captures what the feeling of that experience is.
I just got off the phone with a young man, about 25-year-old, and his beautiful dog had died. And he's having dreams that he knows that his dog has died, but he can pet them,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we're thinking, well, those are signs, really, right? He knows in the dream that his dog has died, but the dog is there, and he can pet her. So
Yeah. And again, I mean, this kind of stuff to me is evidence of things that we just don't really know about entirely. We really don't understand those kinds of experiences. And there's a lot more of those than most people would imagine, I think. Remember that
yeah,
article that we had from Rupert
yeah,
Sheldrake?
right.
It's very interesting how many times there are visitations that are pretty substantial. I mean, very substantial. And I've had them. I don't discount them in the least. And so I think that we deserve to take them for what we think they are, what we believe they are, because our perception is probably more expansive than we generally get credit for. And I always think that there's the likelihood that when we're children, we experience
Oh,
more, we
we're much
perceive
more open
more,
to that, right?
and then over time, our our breadth of perception gets narrowed to what's more consensually
In
acceptable.
in the society, right?
Yeah, and 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 if you don't pay attention to things, eventually you don't notice them any longer.
Right.
We develop selective attention, and then sometimes things like this break through. That's my philosophy on
Yeah.
this.
I mean, I get. And also, just I know we have to, but I also love when she said, "I know I will love another animal in the future, and I know I will find new meaning and purpose at some point, but that they will be woven, which they've already been
Yeah.
woven into her
Yep.
life, her
Yep.
soul. But at the moment, I just want to be sad, and that's okay, and it is okay just to be sad."
Absolutely. Yeah. And her observing of self
Mhm.
is very helpful to
Mhm.
the grieving process, I think, because there are times when people are feeling sad and they're like, "What's wrong with me? I should be feeling differently," or, I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps, or some. There's like a lot of fighting with whatever you're experiencing. And I feel like her perception of her observance of herself is gentle.
Yeah.
It's accurate. She's
Yeah.
grieving, and it is embracing of her sadness. All of these things I think are healthy and helpful
Yes.
to her grieving process because that allows her to just experience it and not get to,
Not
sort of
not
da-
being yeah.
not
Don't
really put down by it,
right,
not
exactly.
debilitated by it.
Right.
Just like, okay, I'm grieving. I want to feel sad right now. It's really
Yeah.
okay. So I
Instead
think,
of thinking I shouldn't or I need to
yeah,
move on or yeah,
yeah, yeah.
definitely.
So we would really want to thank
Liz.
Liz for this.
Mhm.
Also, we want to thank Marty for your heart, your like,
Oh,
and we're going to ask again if you haven't subscribed, please do. If you feel that this is valuable, and also if you can give a brief comment or a thumbs up or a heart, we always appreciate that because it helps others to find the program more readily. So thank you, Nancy, as
of
always,
course.
and good night, everybody. We'll
We
see you
will
next week.
see you next week.